This morning, we will be looking at threat hunting. So, what is threat hunting? Threat hunting is basically a proactive cybersecurity technique that involves searching through the network systems and database to really identify any malicious activity that evade existing security defense. So sometimes, even though we have all the security defense in place, what can happen is that malicious activities can evade those defense system, right? And like intrusion detection and all of that, sometimes malicious activity can evade those. So we put threat hunting in place because threat hunting is going to detect to see if there is any malicious activities going on the system. So, unlike reactive security practices, which respond to alert generated by automated tool like the SIM tool, antivirus, intrusion detection, threat hunting assume that an adversary already exists, right? It is assuming that an adversary are already exists in the system, right? It says, listen, we're assuming that an adversary is present in the environment, and what it seeks to do is uncover those threats that are gone undetected. So that is basically what threat hunting does. It look for all the adversaries that are on the system. It uncover them, and it let you know that, listen, there are malicious activities going on that other tools have failed to alert us on. Okay, so we talk about like antivirus software or intrusion detection. And remember, these are not 100% perfect. Malicious activity can evade those detection. And so threat hunting is saying we are assuming that adversaries are present in the system, right? They're already present in the environment, and it uncover them, right? Because we didn't know. So that's why we use threat hunting. Why do we really need threat hunting, right? Why is there a need for threat hunting, right? Traditional security tools, right, and defense techniques that we use, such as firewall and antivirus and the SIM, right, are they are very essential, but they are infallible. They are fault. They can be evaded, right? Cyber criminals increasingly using sophisticated tools that and tools and method that can bypass all these defense. They can bypass the SIM. They can bypass other defense tools that we have, and that's the reason for threat hunting, because they can bypass it, and they can use method to bypass this defenses, such as 0-day, right, exploit. They can use that to bypass the system. Fileless malware, that can be used. Living off the land is another method that cyber criminals are using to bypass the system, and so that's why we need a threat hunting. Right, advanced persistent threat is another sophisticated method that is now being used, that cyber criminals can use to bypass the system defense. And that's why we really need threat hunting, because threat hunting is going to tell us what have been evaded, what adversaries are present, what went on undercover, that these tools that we have used, such as antivirus and all those, that evade the security defense, right? So that's what it's going to tell us. So there are types of threat hunting. right? We can use either of those threat hunting. Yeah, threat hunting can be broadly categorized into three groups, based on their origin and based on the investigation that have been carried out. So we have structural hunting, that's one of them. It is based on known indicators of compromise or tactic techniques, and procedures. So if you look for the MITRE ATT&CK and the MITRE ATT&CK website, it tells you the kind of in the kinds of attacks, their techniques, and because what happened, companies would have carried out a lot of investigation already, and they would have known what some countries like Russia and China and all those places, and what are their sophisticated level of cyber attack, what tools, who are they attacking. So that's what the MITRE ATT&CK does for us. It gives you some information and procedures and the types of attacks and all of those. So when we talk about base and indicators of compromise or tactic, techniques, and procedure, right, from the threat intelligence, you're often guided through that framework, right? So you're able to see, so you are able to do some searching for lateral movement pattern, and all those patterns are impacting different companies, right? So it's, you can be able to search for lateral movement pattern after receiving intelligent and specific malware family, because that's what the MITRE attacks and all of those give you. It gives you information, right? And it gives you intelligence and malware and their families and all of that. And so you could look for the MITRE ATT&CK online, and you will be able to get a understanding of what I'm talking about. Then you have unstructural hunting. It relies on hunter's experience and intuition. It involves searching for abnormal behavior, without any specific indication, right? So an example could be investigating an unusual spike in outbound network traffic at odd time or odd hours. So this unstructural one, we say, okay, we weren't here at 2 a.m. in the morning. We're seeing unusual outbound of traffic, and nobody was on the really in the office, nobody was at work, but we're seeing unusual traffic. You're using your experience and your intuition. We have situational or entity driven hunting, and in this hunting it is based on specific system application or users that are considered high risk or critical, right? So in the situational or entity driven hunting, it basically focus on the system, right, and application. It takes into consideration, right, users in the organization, persons who have access to the system. So it takes into consider those. It is often triggered by changes in risk posture or incidents, right? Example, maybe investigating a privileged user's account for insider threats, because sometimes the greatest threat to an organization is those that are within the organization. So we want to, with the structure, with the unstructural, with the situational, we look at the inside. We look at the system from the inside. Those who have privileges on the inside, we take those into consideration, right? So yeah, threat hunting process. How do we carry out this process of threat hunting? Threat hunting follows a methodical process that includes several key stages. It's a design way of doing it, and it involves different phases. So when we're going to look at the entirety of carrying out this process, we're going to have to begin with a question: why am I carrying out this process, right? We're going to come up with an hypothesis, such as, could an attack have gained persistent through scheduled tasks, right? So we have to look at the hypothesis. We have to look at the hypothesis based on the threat intelligence, based on historical incident, based on known adversary, which we call TTP, right? Known adversary. We have to look at all of those. So that is the first aspect of the process, right? We look at the hypothesis, the development. Then we're going to do what is called data collection and preparation, where data is gathered from various sources, right? So we're gonna ask the question: could there be a persistent adversary, right? Could it be a scheduled task? And then we're going to collect data. So where we're going to get our data from? Gather them from various sources, including the endpoint logs. We're going to gather them from network traffic. We're going to gather them from authentication logs. We're going to gather them from DNS queries. We're going to gather them from application and system log, because all of these can tell us if there is any abnormality going on the system, if there is any persistent, advanced persistent threat. We can get all of these. Are there anyone that's constantly trying to log in and the login has failed? We're going to check all of those logs to make sure that whatever we are hunting for, we nip it in the bud, right? So, and then we have the execution of the huntings. After we answer the question, we do the preparation, we look at log, then we're going to do the hunting. And hunters explore database to test the hypothesis, using their queries, right? So we're going to explore it, we're going to carry it out, visualize in queries such as visualization, statistical analysis. We're going to whether through machine learning, whether tool use including SIM or Splunk, we're going to use those to perform. We're going to do scripting, platform scripting. Then we're going to do investigating and analyzing, right? If suspicious behavior is found, analysis is very important, right? So we're going to analyze those, right? The event, we're going to look at the event log to track any activity, right? The timeline, we're going to look at timeline reconstruction and attribute. The context building are usually essential at this stage, right? And then after we have investigated, then we're going to remedy the situation. We're going to respond and we're going to remedy. Remember, now we're just running, we're doing the testing. It may not be happening presently on the system, but we are doing everything to run the test, just like pen testing, where we do a pen testing, to be proactive, to make sure that there are no abnormal activity taking place on the system. It's the same thing with the threat hunting. We are answering the question, we are going through the process just to make sure that the system, those systems and tools that we have in place are not evading any malicious or criminal activities, cyber criminal activities. Okay, so when we go through, then we're going to respond and remedy. If a threat is confirmed, it is usually escalated for an incident response. A threat intelligence from the hunting can also be used to update direction and rules, right? So if we assume there's a threat on the system, we carry out the process, we run the process, then we can come up with some ideas, some rules now that was going to help to improve defense, right? And educate the team. So this is why it's so important that we carry out these testings in our environment, because it helps us to come up now with defense. What defense? What if this had happened? Okay, we assume that there is a threat that was evaded under using the antivirus. But now that we did the threat hunting, we found that fault, and now here's a rule that we can put in place to improve our defense. Here is how we can educate our team and what to look out for, and to be better able to defend our system from cyber criminals. Then we're going to do documentation and feedback, right? What are our findings after we have done our testing? We have gone through, answer our question, we did the running. Now what is our documentation and feedback? And this documentation and feedback that we're going to come up with is going to help us to learn something, is going to help us to improve our threat module and redefine our hypothesis, because the next time we're trying to answer question, we're not going to try and ask the question based on what we had before. So we can come up with new hypothesis this time after we have done our documentation. And then we have framework and methodologies. MITRE ATT&CK, which briefly spoke about that. These are key reference for TTP. It helps the threat hunting or the threat hunter observe behavior, right, to known adversary techniques, right? Right, so we are able to get an idea of known adversaries. What are their techniques that are used? What are their tactics that they are using? So what it do, it enable structure and repeatable threat hunting strategies, and what it helps you to do is basically know that this is a threat that is out there. These are their strategy. This is where they come from. This is how they're carrying out their procedures. That's what the MITRE ATT&CK and all of these framework helps you to do. So when you have a little time, you can actually Google the MITRE ATT&CK, and it gives you a whole list. This is what cybersecurity individuals, threat hunters, and all of those use. They look at those attacks. You know, they may see something they're not familiar with. You can always go there and get search to see what other threat intelligence platforms are logging out there. Tools and technologies. There are so many tools and technologies that are at our disposal that we can use. A range of tools assist in threat hunting may include, you have the SIEM, you have the Splunk, we talk about that, Logarithm, QRadar, right? We talk about those, and you have endpoint detection and respond. CrowdStrike is another one. So there are several tools that are out there that we can use in our threat hunting to make it better. You have Cyber Killer Chain, which help you to understand and disrupting adversary operation. What the Cyber Killer Chain does, it help you to tighten your defense, right, across different stages of attack. And you can Google that Cyber Killer Chain when you have some time. What are some of our challenges in threat hunting? Data overload is some challenges. Sifting through the terabytes of data to find what you're looking for can become very overwhelming. You have false positive, differentiating between malicious behavior and it being benign can be complex, right? That can be a problem. That's why we use rules so to eliminate false positive when we configure the system and set rules so we can eliminate a lot of that. Sometimes skill shortage is a problem. The required high-level expertise, that we don't have that. The forensic persons that we need, we probably don't have them. And then we have tool integration, right? Sometimes tool correlating the data across disjointed system is technical and demanding, because not all systems are interconnect or they're not connected, and sometimes to get all those information is very challenging. What are some of the benefits of threat hunting? Early detection, right? When we do threat hunting, we can find detection, we can identify the threat before they escalate into major incident. We can enhance the security posture based on just by doing threat hunting. To inform, so we are better able to inform, we are better able to detect, we are better able to configure the system, put rules in place and policies. Resilience against APT, advanced persistent threat. It provides the capability to uncover those, right? And continuous improvement. Threat hunting help us to have continuous improvement, right? So If you have any question on threat hunting, that aspect of it was threat hunting, right? So now we are moving over into what is called root cause analysis. Let's look at the purpose and the definition. So root cause analysis is a problem solving methodology. It aims at identifying fundamental cause or fault of a problem, right? So it identifies, basically aim at identifying the cause or the fault of a problem. In the cybersecurity, root cause analysis really helps you to uncover the origin of security incident. You want to know what is the root cause of this, what creates this problem, what was the fault, right? If you have a system outage or an operational failure, to prevent the reoccurrence, you have to know the root cause. What caused the grid to go out? What caused the system to fail? So root cause analysis look at the problem. It look at the root cause of the fault, right? And find ways to improve it, right? So let's say we have an operational failure. To prevent the reoccurrence, we have to know the cause. The importance in cybersecurity. Why is it important in the cybersecurity world? Incidents such as data breach or system failure often many times they often have multiple contributing factor, right? Poor configuration of firewall could create that. Unpatched system, a human error. Root cause analysis go beyond just addressing immediate system, right? And the symptoms, right? It goes beyond that and why the problem occur in the first place. That's what we are looking at. It's not only, oh, the system failed, there was an outage, there was a failure. Okay, there was an unpatched system, but what is the root cause of that, right? We got to look into this. So some common root cause analysis tool, we have tools that can help us, the 5 ways, right? The 5 whys, techniques that involve asking why, right? So let's look at it now. Common root cause analysis tools and techniques. The 5 why are techniques that involve asking why repeatedly, right? Typically 5 times, right? We repeat that typically 5 times. 5 times until the root cause is identified. So the why. Why did this happen, right? So we have different ways of finding out. We can use the fishbone, the diagram, which help us categorize potential cause into groups such as people, process, tools, and environment, right? Okay. We have the 4-3 analysis. It's a top-down approach using logical diagram, right? These are just theories, right? We use them. We're trying to use them to find out why did this happen. So we have different tools and techniques that can help us to ask the question of the why. What caused the root problem, right? So those are just techniques or methods that we can use that are out there to our disposal to answer the question. So if we should look at a scenario, right? Let's say a ransomware attack disable your network. A root cause analysis might reveal that the root cause was a user clicking a phishing link. But the deeper issue could be inadequate security awareness training or lack of email filtering system, right? So when we look at this scenario and we are looking at the root cause is somebody click on a fish email, but it go beyond the fish clicking. Somebody was not, there was inadequate training. Somebody wasn't trained to spot a phishing email, and it go beyond just not aware. First of all, there should have been a filtering on the email system. So you see where the root cause is taking us. It's taking us beyond just people, system, and process. What did we do wrong in the first place? The first thing I believe we did wrong, we did not install an email filtering system. Secondly, we didn't train our employee to to spot what a phishing email looks like. So let's look at performing the root cause analysis. Step-by-step procedure we're going to look at, right? Define the problem. We're going to create a clear problem statement, right? Example, unauthorized access was detected on server X at 2 a.m. on May 3rd, right? That's a clear problem statement. So we have the problem on May 3rd, 2 a.m. there was a detection of unauthorized access. That's the problem. Clear statement of the problem. Let's gather our evidence, right? The next one is gather evidence. We're going to look at the logs. We're going to look at the alert system. We're going to look at the network traffic. We're going to look at the user's log. We're going to look at all of these and the configuration. How did this happen? So we get into the root cause of it, right? By process. Then we're going to identify the causal factors, right? Determine what evidence or condition contribute to the incident. What contributed to an unauthorized person accessing the network at 2 a.m.? What was the contributing factors, right? What contribute to these, right? And these can be categorized as technical, right? Unpatched software that could be a problem. Procedural, lack of multi-factor authentication, human employee error. So these are what could create the problem. So we have to look at all of those. The procedural, the technical, all of these. What created the problem? How did it happen? So to determine the root cause, we're going to use tools like, again, we look at the 5 why. We look at we said we can use those to determine our root cause, right? Ensuring that we correct the problem. After we find the root cause, then we have to ensure that we correct the problem. Okay? So that is very important. Now, we're going to be looking at incident response training and testing overview, right? So incident response training and testing are proactive measures. Remember that? They are proactive measures to ensure individual and team know how to detect and respond and recover from a cybersecurity incident. So when we talk about the training, we're going to train the people how to be proactive, how to detect, and how to respond to a cybersecurity incident. What is the objective of this training? To understand incident response policies and procedures. So you get an education on how to understand and understand these procedures. Known individual roles and their responsibility during an incident response and practice decision making under pressure. So the whole entire incident training, the objective and the plan is to educate you, to train you to how to operate, how to respond should there be an incident response. And so sometimes this can be carried out in a role play, in an organization, your training department or your manager may decide that they're going to run a training, incident response training with you to see how you will respond should there be a problem, how you're going to respond, what kind of decision are you going to make in those scenarios. So we can test the method. So there are different ways. I just said it not long ago. So there are ways we can do the training in an exercise, in a tabletop exercise, right? So your manager or your department may say, okay, today we're going to be doing a training, incident response training, and it can be in the form of tabletop exercise, right? And where in this exercise you are given scenarios, right? And those tests, you are tested through process and decision making, right? Red team and blue team exercise, where you may have the red team simulate an attack while the blue team may defend against the organization structure. So you might have one team will decide they're going to be the attackers. So remember now, on the tabletop exercise, it is discussions and scenarios. So they may have two sets of people. One is the red team, one is the blue team. They're defending against, they're trying to invade the organization network, and one is trying to defend against it, right? So training, the benefits of all of this is to ensure that staff remain competent and confident in any given situation, in any given real world threat. It reduces incident response time, and it reduces damage to the organization. So that's the reason for the whole incident response training, right? And the methods that we use, they can use several methods. Tabletop is not the only one, okay? But there are several other ways to carry out this test. Now we're going to look at digital forensic. A lot of you might have heard about digital forensic. But what is digital forensic in the cybersecurity world? Because there are many times incidents take place within the organization, and a forensic team have to come in and they have to get into your computer, and do a forensic on the system, right? This is to help to tell what the problem is and how did it happen, right? Digital forensic involve preservation, identification, and extract, right? It involves analysis and documentation of computer evidence. The goal is to recover data in a legal, admissible manner. So when the forensic people come, they are coming, and all the data, all the evidence have to be preserved. They cannot be tampered with. They cannot be modified. Earlier on in our courses, we talk about integrity, right? So this is where integrity will come in. The data is not modified, it's not altered. You have to preserve it so that when these legal persons come, the forensic, digital forensic people come, they are getting information that is accurate, wasn't tampered with, wasn't modified, okay? So it is used in legal system many times, right? So standard face, we have some standard face identification. We recognize what data and evidence may be relevant, right? We preserve them. We prevent the evidence from being tampered with. We use different tools to preserve those tools, like write blockers. We use those, and then we collect the evidence. We collect the evidence through things as FTK imaging, right? We use some of those. They are different. We have the EnCase. Those are some ways of collecting evidence, and then the evidence are examined. They are reviewed for artifacts. They are reviews for delete files. So a lot of time people believe that no one is able to know if they tamper the system, if they delete the logs or anything. The forensic personnel, the digital forensic personnel, can tell if they were deleted. That's why we do our best to preserve the evidence, and then the evidence, then they are analyzed, right? Reconstructed. They identify for malware, for trace. They use it to trace users' action, and then they come back with the report, the document, every step that they identify, right? So digital forensic is very important. Sometimes the court will order that if you said that there was a attack on the system, there was a big attack, right? You might have digital forensic personnel coming in, And the first step is identification, preservation, collection, examination, analyzing, and reporting. That's the procedure, right, of digital forensic, right? Remember what we said there? Identification, preservation, collection, examination, analyzing, reporting, because we have to recognize that there was a problem, right? There's a device that is involved. We have to preserve it, we have to collect it, and there are ways that the forensic department have in collecting those. And then legal consideration, they maintain the chain of custody, which is essential. Failure to do so may lead to evidence being inadmissible in court, because sometimes the court sometimes you may be called in court, depends on the nature of the breach or what happened. You may have to preserve those evidence, right? You cannot tamper in it, you cannot clean the system. Sometimes, like I said, they can know if somebody really delete anything from the system. So when we talk about now data collection and procedure, to gather digital evidence in a manner that ensures that the integrity is admissible in court. That is very important when we are doing the digital forensic, that the digital information is gathered and that it is able to present in court should they ask for it in court, right? Types of data, we have different type of data. You have the memory RAM data that you might have to preserve, which is in the computer. You have non-volatile data, which is the hard drive, the USB cable, the logs, the cloud storage. All of those they may want them in the data collection procedure. That's a part of the digital forensic evidence. So for the procedures, we have documentation. We record the condition of the screen, the device. This is just carrying out the actual process of the digital forensic, right? Documentation, it may have screen, it may involve persons handling evidence. You have tool usage like the employee certified forensic tool for data collection, chain of custody form. These are documents of who accessed the evidence, who touched it, who was there. And you have data verification. You're going to learn about the MD5 and the hash. These are used to verify the integrity of a file or documents. So let's look at some example of tools. We have the FTK Imager, the X-Ways Forensic, Magnet. These are just different tools that one can use in the forensic process. Disk imaging and analyzing, right? A forensic disk, basically a forensic disk image is a section by section copy of a storage device, right? You may not know how important they are, but the person who is doing the forensic knows the importance of these disk images. It includes all files, metadata, slack space, and even delete files. They can find out that files were deleted, right? So in digital forensic, it is very important that evidence are preserved, not tampered with. Again, we have some imaging tool like the FTK Imager, the Unix Linux clonalizer, and you have the EnCase Imager. Those are just some tools that can be used, right? And in analyzing, we're going to identify file creation and modification and deletion pattern. The forensic digital forensic personnel can detect all of that when they are doing their collection, the gathering, and they're analyzing. They search for keyword matching and all of that, recover deletion of hidden file. All of that can happen, and they can examine the system log and registration files. All of that they can find out, guys. That's why a lot of time people think that they have deleted files, they get into logs, they think they get away. No, unless you actually dump that entire computer system, you will not get away. And what they do, they can verify to see if anything was tampered with, if the integrity of the data was tampered with, by checking the hash of the file. Okay, so to perform the digital forensic preparation phase, you define the scope, you assemble your toolkit, you secure authorization, because you have to get all of that as a forensic person, right? Then you're going to detect and initial respond, right? Identify the indicators of compromise. What is there that indicating that there was some problem? They're going to collect the collection of image, secure the image device, following the forensic best practice. So you're going to secure all images following your best practice, and then you're going to analyze, investigating to answer the key question: what happened, how was it, who was involved in it, and what was the impact, right? You're going to in the analyzing, you're going to look at that, the timeline, the email chat analysis, file system metadata. We're going to look at all of those, the malware reserve and engineer. We're going to look at all of those when we are analyzing our information. Then we're going to have our document and reporting, creating structural report. We have to do that. We are going to have executive summary, details of our findings, timeline of the evidence, tool use, and evidence log. We have to do all of that, right, when we are doing our forensic and reporting back. And then we have testifying, that is if you're called into court. Digital forensics expert may call you to present a finding in court if necessary. Depends many times on the level of damage and the money that is being sued for, or who's been taken to court. Many times you will be called, taken to court, called into court to give an evidence, report, or defend against what you are bringing against each other in the court of law, right? So that is basically it for this morning. We will pick up in our next class.